What is this, like our fourth or our fifth?
This is our 6th episode.
Our sixth?
6.
Wow.
Because the last one was the first Platte River.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to The Spider and the Fly, a mile-high true crime podcast.
I'm Tiffany. I am a co-host of Spider and the Fly.
Oh, and my name is Ben. I'm the co-host as well.
Yes.
Usually when we start, we ask for clear articulation of our speech. We ask for only positive creative energy.
Yes.
And none of the bad negative energy. Now, Colorado has a rich history of crime. I feel like I have a responsibility to share this history on this podcast. If you're a returning listener, then you already know that this podcast focuses mostly on violent crimes that take place in the state of Colorado. As far as our structure goes, we try to lay down the facts before all else. This podcast is for your entertainment. We've been saying that since day one, that we drink, we smoke, and we talk about true crime. And with that, cheers.
Cheers. Let me crack mine open.
What are you drinking there, Tiff?
I got a Crown Royal whiskey and cola.
And it comes in a beautiful purple can.
Yes, my favorite color. All right.
Bakers. Our opinions do not and will not change the fact that some people have suffered and in many cases died tragic deaths. Sometimes these stories are solved and have some resemblance of a happy ending, but some don't. And that's the harsh truth about the subject matter that we cover on The Spider and the Fly, a mile-high true crime podcast.
Yes.
Tiffany nor myself have ever claimed to be experts on this show, and we have always and will always support victim advocacy. We do this show out of the utmost respect for the victims of our stories, and that being said, we vow to call it how we see it in all aspects of our recording. Take from that what you will.
Right.
With that out of the way, you may have to brace yourself for some graphic content because that's kind of what we do here.
That's right.
All right. So today I will be covering the freshly solved murder of Betty Lee Jones.
Oh.
Now, I was torn on covering a case that was an old true crime story and a new crime story, and I made a compromise.
Okay.
So today's story is actually the cold case from the 70s that went over 50 years unsolved until DNA evidence was able to link the brutal rape and murder of Betty to a man named Paul Leroy Martin.
Wow.
All right.
Juicy.
Yeah, so this was actually solved in 2021.
Oh.
And they were able to use DNA evidence to pin the rape and murder of this woman to this man. And actually, I have some interesting facts that are going to come up later. It's going to get a little wishy-washy, as it usually does.
All right.
All right.
Tell me your story, Ben.
All right. So the year is 1970.
Okay.
The body of a Denver woman was found by 2 Department of Transportation workers in an embankment just off of Colorado I-28, and that's going to be like right on the county line of Boulder.
Okay.
Boulder police quickly opened an investigation, and Betty's body was found near the county line between Boulder and Jefferson. According to the investigators, she had showed signs of having her hands bound, as well as being strangled and sexually assaulted before being shot multiple times. During this investigation, there's some conflicting details. Based on what I saw from the Boulder Police Department, they said that she had been shot. They didn't mention that she had been shot multiple times. I found that on another state document.
Okay.
But I will be getting into my sources a little bit later once we get there. Now, basically what had happened, Betty Lee Jones was a recent bride. So she had been married for maybe only, I think it was maybe like 9 days.
Wow.
She was married to her husband.
Very newlywed.
And she had 2 children as well.
Okay.
Now, I'm not completely clear whether or not these are his children or children from a previous relationship. I'm assuming it's previous relationship.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why here in just a moment. So apparently she was having an argument with her new husband, and so the year is 1970, and this is in Denver, Colorado, probably like maybe Cap Hill downtown sort of areas where they were living at the time, which is completely different in the 70s, I imagine.
And she was found on like the borderline of Boulder?
Completely away from the city.
Wow.
Yes. But here's what happened. So apparently she was having an argument with her new husband. It got heated and they separated. Eyewitnesses saw her flag down a blue sedan, get into the sedan, and that was the last she was ever seen. There are some discrepancies, though. During the police report, they said that she had gotten into a Chevy Malibu. What eventually would happen, they would find that the actual murderer and rapist was driving a Plymouth Fury, same color, blue. And just to kind of get an idea, I went on Google and compared the two. It's the same fucking car.
Yeah.
Like, you take a look at that thing. I'm not like a car guy, obviously. Yeah. But they look very similar. So I can see... You are?
I'm like those are they look very similar.
Very similar.
Yeah.
Both are hard tops and could easily be confused at a glance. Amidst Betty's missing, this is before they found her body. She just went missing. She wasn't seen until they found her body, obviously. Right. Betty's 2 children stayed in the care of her parents, who remained their keepers throughout their life. Okay. So the grandparents raised them. Yeah. I don't know what the situation was with father. I wasn't able to find too much information. I do have his name somewhere in my notes, but it's not particularly relevant to that portion of the story.
Well, that's why you say you don't know if they are somebody else's or if they were his.
I'm assuming they were her children.
Yeah. Yeah.
If
her parents are raising them,
it's so easy to fall down a rabbit hole with all of these stories, and sometimes they don't lead anywhere. Sometimes they do. And that's a problem, too. Sometimes they lead you...
because you got to add more things.
Well, researching this case, I did fall down a rabbit hole. And I'll actually get into some of the interesting things that I found in that rabbit hole, but we'll get there, too.
All right.
The case was reopened in 2006.
And this is 1970?
1970 was when the body was found. So I imagine she probably went missing... not too much longer, her body was found.
Yeah.
And a lot of things have changed from 2006, from 1970. The case was reopened in 2006 due to some DNA evidence that was recovered from Jones's body, and it was submitted to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, good old CBI. Mm-hmm. Male DNA profile was developed, but the suspect profile was not in the National Combined DNA Index System database. They had DNA for whoever could be the rapist or the murderer. Yeah. But they didn't have anything that corresponded to it in their database, which is actually kind of crazy because doing research for this, if you do like a 21andMe, like the chromosome search, or like Ancestry, all that family stuff, it's led me down another rabbit hole. But that's like some Illuminati shit I don't want to get into.
Yeah, that's for another podcast.
It is. Not this one. Not yet. But anyways, if you submit your DNA to this, it becomes part of this database. Pretty much since that's been a thing, they've been solving all kinds of these murders and, through DNA evidence. I'll be getting into that in a little bit more as well.
Okay.
So how the killer was determined. The CBI was working with forensic genealogy and able to identify someone who had a genetic match. Someone who lived in Denver at the time. Now, they were able to find the brother of Paul Leroy Martin by chance. They found 2 brothers that were in the DNA registry and that matched the DNA. When they started investigating these individuals, they talked to one of the brothers and they said, well, here's the thing. There's me and my brother, and we have a 3rd brother. They call him an estranged brother. So, like, they didn't talk to him. They didn't have contact with him. They didn't know the whereabouts of him.
Right.
The missing brother.
Yeah.
This was identified as a fucking murderer and rapist named Paul Leroy Martin. Who was found to have died June of 2019. So just 2 years before the case was actually closed and DNA evidence concluded that he was the murderer and rapist.
Yeah. He died?
He died 2019. I'll get into that.
Okay.
I have a lot of interesting questions that I want to discuss.
Okay.
There's a lot of shit here. I'm trying to keep it. I'm trying to keep it short. I'm trying to keep it simple, but it's dense.
Okay, that's fine.
Died in 2019, and he was actually buried in Fort Logan National Cemetery. The court authorized an exhumation, so they dug up his corpse to extract DNA to compare. April of the same year, Martin's body was exhumed. And DNA evidence was taken, tested against the sample found on Betty's body. The lab work was conducted at Fort Logan, and biological material was collected. This is based off of a statement by the Boulder County Sheriff's Office. The guy in charge of the investigation was a fellow named Detective Steve Ainsworth. He was pretty much detective in charge of pretty much putting together the investigation, finding the DNA evidence, making sure that that was all compared properly, and he was the man responsible for finding the killer. But the CBI and the FBI were working very closely with a genetics company called Bow Technologies.
Okay.
Now, in 2019, the suspect DNA was submitted to a private lab, Bow Technologies, where a profile was developed. The FBI's forensic genetic genealogy team was enlisted to help develop a family tree. The suspect's generation in that family tree was identified and more fully developed. All offspring were identified and eliminated except for one daughter. There's some conflicting things that I found while investigating this story. Obviously, the blue sedan, that easy conclusion to draw. But when her body was sent for autopsy confirming the cause of death, an unknown DNA sample was collected. Now, this unknown DNA sample was what they used to determine that this Paul Leroy Martin guy was the murderer.
Okay.
I cannot find any information in any of my sources what that DNA evidence is. And what really makes this interesting is if they had the foresight to collect that sort of evidence from a body in 1970 when DNA genealogy really didn't become part of investigation until the 1980s, 1980 in fact.
Right.
So while researching this story, there has been a shadow of a doubt in my mind that maybe this process, give the devil his due.
Yeah.
Maybe we caught a murderer, murderer.
Yeah.
But it's a closed case.
Right.
This is where I don't want to say conspiracy, but this is where the gears, they start turning and they don't all turn in the same direction. You know what I mean? They open a cold case to close a cold case. They're collecting samples of DNA evidence before that's even a possibility of doing so, which I find questionable.
Yeah.
There were a number of rape murders that happened in the 70s around this time.
Mm-hmm. And it like the manner of death is like the same, like multiple times, like to shoot a woman multiple times is crazy.
It's completely insane. It's an insane story. So it's obvious that DNA testing is a modern miracle. Catching killers, rapists, and in some cases even proving people innocent. Wrongful imprisonment is not a myth. Let's just get that out there.
No, it's not a myth. There are a lot of innocent people in prison. And
what good is a functioning justice system if innocent people are wrongly convicted?
Right.
Circumstantial evidence can work for you, it can work against you.
Yeah.
Forensic evidence is backed by solid science and holds up in the court of law. I think that they might be closing cases or using DNA evidence is not in the proper sense. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. There could be other possibilities.
There are other possibilities. The DNA evidence is conclusive, but they could have pinned that on anybody. They could have pinned that on any dead person.
Yeah.
Really. So, I don't know. I find it interesting. It's almost like, I don't know. I'm conflicted on the whole thing. Because it opens up a lot of doors. It opens up a lot of possibilities. It's like $1 billion industry, this DNA testing thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, the genealogy thing is what's new these days. That's how they caught the Golden State Killer.
Right. Right. Yeah. In fact, Bow Technologies, I believe they were involved. I know definitely someone involved in solving this case. The investigation team were involved in catching them as well.
Okay.
Moving on. Who has DNA helped bring to justice? Peggy Beckman, who was a woman who was also raped and killed in 1963, making it the oldest case in history to be solved by genetic genealogy, DNA testing. Though her killer is also not accounted for and likely dead.
Yeah.
Jeannie Moore was the first genealogical match used in solving a cold case in Colorado. It was found that she had been raped and killed by a sexual predator while he had been out on bond for raping another woman. Absolute slimeball, sack of shit.
Yeah. What is the date?
That one, I don't have a date for that one. I think that one is in the 80s.
Yeah. Not to, you just a little sidebar off or to piggyback off of what you just said about he was out on bond, is they didn't treat sexual assault as serious as they should have.
No, and definitely not as serious as they're treating it now.
Yeah.
In fact, one point I wanted to make about I was going to sprinkle some sugar on this Bow Technologies company. They do responsible for the DNA testing. They were involved in and proving the innocence of the Memphis Three.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was basically the police tried to pin, all these crimes on these 3 innocent children, essentially.
Right. Yes.
And so that cleared their name. But Bode Technologies is doing a lot of stuff. They've been encouraging victims of rape to come forward, and they offer rape kit testing.
Yes.
As part of some of the services they've offered. And they've taken a lot of slime balls off the street. They've gotten a lot of rapists.
That's good.
Yeah.
Because there's so many that they just have on the shelf, that you need to test them and see if these people are probably in the system.
Yeah.
Just test them, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
there's a lot.
This isn't a political podcast.
No.
But, it's politics are everywhere. We get political on this podcast every here and again. There are some places that want to make that sort of thing inaccessible to people.
Right.
Can you believe the audacity?
The audacity to get justice for something that happened to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a point that the Detective Steve Ainsworth, he was heavily involved in solving the murder using the DNA evidence. This would be his final case because after that, he had put in, I think, 40 years of detective work. He would decline promotions within the police academy because he was so damn good at what he did as a detective.
Yeah.
And, everybody in the department looked up to him because he was just this, badass detective. So really one of the heroes of the story is a Steve Ainsworth guy who, he was no stone unturned.
Right.
He was responsible for finding the murderer.
Yes.
If this is, in fact, the murderer.
Yes.
So, I wanted to shout out the detective who did fantastic work. Oh, yeah. Another shout out goes out to the CBI, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. Time and time again, they pop up in the stories, and actually, most of the time when it comes to homicide, they're the investigation team in the state that ends up finding the killer, or at least putting together the investigation. So shout out to the CBI. FBI also involved in this case, worked very closely with the CBI as well, and Detective Steve Ainsworth. And lastly, a shout out to Bode Technologies, who continues to do fantastic work.
Yes.
And proving the innocence or proving who's guilty.
Yeah.
In a lot of these cases through DNA evidence.
That's right. And testing those rape kits, that's good. That's good work there.
Absolutely. But I did want to kind of touch on, just scrutinize the process, because this sort of technology can be used for good, it can be used for evil, it could be used for, I don't want to say nefarious means, but distruthful means.
Yeah, I am for the 23andMe and those type of sites. I'm for it, but at the same time I'm a little apprehensive about me actually doing it. Because you don't know, it's your DNA that you're giving to somebody, so you just don't know. So I agree with you. I'm both ways on it. I love the work that they're doing, getting people and bringing them to justice and putting them away, or like you said, having innocent people be free. So right. I love that, but I'm just I don't know if I'm going to do it. Right. I would like to do it though, but I don't know. I'm on the fence.
Yeah, I'm on the fence too. I believe in justice, or should I say I want to believe in the justice system, but it only works if it works for everybody.
That's right.
It can't be a system that is selective. It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
There's always a lot of talk about criminal justice reform, and in the United States, I'm sure you watched the State of the Union, Joe Biden.
No.
He's talking about infrastructure. He didn't say "Let's make America great again," but in so many words, you know what I mean. He's like, "We're gonna buy American," yada yada. But it's criminal justice reform. In dire need of it. In dire need of it. Get private money out of the jail system.
That's right.
Get it out of the fucking courts.
Yeah.
Who's buying these judges?
Shit. That's a whole nother podcast too.
Speaking of judges, I was gonna save this for the piece of cake.
Okay.
Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Oh.
Nominated for Supreme Court.
Yeah.
First black woman to sit on the nation's most powerful court in its 233-year history. Something to be proud of, huh?
Yeah, that's great. That's a big piece of cake.
How do you feel about it as a black woman?
You know what? I'm very happy that it happened. I'm very happy that it's a black woman that's sitting on the bench. That's very great. I just feel like right now it's the time for people of color, black people, to finally be given the opportunities that we should have always had, I totally after 2020 and the Black Lives Matter movement and all of that, and you see how racist people really are. I'm happy that she got it. I'm happy that Biden decided to do that, and that's the way he was going to go. He said that's what he was going to do, and so I'm glad he did it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think people can underestimate how important representation is.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It matters.
It's something you take for granted.
Very much. It matters.
Absolutely it does. So, good piece of cake.
Yeah.
Congrats to her. She's not confirmed yet, but I'm pretty sure that's going to go through.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we can hope. Either way that she was, nominated or whatever is a big deal.
You want to hear something crazy? Ketanji Brown Jackson was born the same year that Betty Lee Jones died.
Really?
5 days between her death and...
Wow.
Weird factoid.
Yeah. Just something you stumbled across on.
Now, before I wrap this up, there's probably some listeners thinking, what's the point of all this? We got a man guilty of a crime that died before he was caught and sentenced. Personally, I have some complicated feelings about it, but the fact of the matter is, regardless of the situation, in the home, 2 children grew up without their mother for years, despite having 0 leads. For about 50 years, her children were informed, obviously, about the investigation. But, they're 50-year-old men.
Right.
That's 50 years ago. A half century.
Yeah.
A half century goes by without having answers.
Yeah.
Living your whole life just having something, your own mother taken from you.
Right.
No answers.
No answers.
Until just 2 years ago, where they finally stuck a pin in it with DNA evidence.
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't able to find any information on what DNA was found on her body whatsoever. Yeah. So this isn't a conspiracy podcast. I don't have enough evidence one way or the other to swing that. But I would probably look at the technology of forensic science. That is a double edge.
Yeah.
That sort of power to irrefutably hold up in court, that can go either way. That can hurt you. That can help you. That
sometimes they get it wrong.
Yes, and sometimes they get it wrong.
Yeah, sometimes they get it wrong.
It's so powerful.
Yeah,
it's so powerful for something to be like that to be, part of our justice system, for better or worse.
Yeah,
I mean, based on the work that Boat Technologies has done, it's for the better.
Yeah, it's for the better. I think more pro than con. Yeah, more pro than con.
I agree.
Yeah.
But something scary. And, this technology, it will, in my mind, I look at, just kind of how police in some jurisdictions operate.
Yeah.
They want to close a case. And, if DNA evidence can do that, and there's, no harm, no foul if it's someone that died 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I just thought that was... too big of a coincidence.
Yeah.
I don't really believe in coincidences. Why would you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all part of the same
Well,
package.
I mean, it just that I think it just sucks that he's dead already. Fuck it.
But to be perfectly fair, it's kind of a long shot that they were able to find a culprit anyways.
Yeah.
They didn't even find his DNA in the database. They found his brother.
Yeah, that's true.
And if his brother didn't even speak up or say, we have this long-lost brother, they never would have found a DNA match.
Right.
So, I have complicated feelings about this because it's yes, they did catch somebody, but to what end? It doesn't really change anything. And most of the time it doesn't. And it's sad.
Yeah, it's sad. It doesn't change anything. But her sons have justice.
Yes.
And they know who killed their mother, even though he's dead. They know who did it, who's responsible, and who would have been held accountable.
Or do they?
We're going to say yes, they do.
We're going to say yes. For the sake of this podcast, I'm going to say that they caught the right guy. Before I call it a day, Tiff, I want to talk about some of my sources here.
Okay.
Because I've got some pretty good ones.
Yeah.
So, the main source, the source where a lot of this information was from the Boulder County Sheriff's Office Facebook page.
Okay.
They put a post out there with all this information. And this was part of their press release saying, we found who we believe is responsible through DNA evidence. So that was put out, press release, Boulder County Sheriff's Office. And a lot of the other sources, the AP, like all these other sources, use that as their source. So digging for information, it was kind of hard patching information together, as it usually is with these older cases.
Right.
That was the main source, obviously, because everyone was using it as a source for the story. Want to give a shout out to CBS4, Annika Padilla, for her article that also covered this. There is a freelance journalist who has an incredible article on this case. She wrote for True Crime Edition. Her name is Josie Clackstrom.
Okay.
Fantastic journalist. I would say I found more information on her article than I found anywhere else. And after doing a little bit of digging, I was able to find those sources myself.
Okay.
So awesome. But a lot of those sources are actually came from Boulder's Daily Camera, a journalist named Mitchell Byers. His article appeared in the Denver Post. They pulled that from the Daily Camera. He also had a very interesting interview with Detective Steve Ainsworth. He's so awesome. He's such a cool dude. Like, if you look at pictures of him, he's just like this old cowboy dude, like cowboy detective.
Yeah.
The more I read about the guy, the more it's like I want to have a beer with him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, his interview really humanized some of the people involved in the investigation, and it's about these human moments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not just about the process behind it, but everybody involved, really.
Yeah.
My last source that I'm going to be sourcing today is the CBI cold case file, which details the Chevy Malibu. The CBI was where I was able to find multiple gunshots as the method of, I believe, her being killed. She could have been strangled to death and then shot, but that seems unlikely in my opinion. But the CBI case file I was able to find. Yeah, before I sign off for this one, I want to give a shout out to the Metro Denver Crime Stoppers for funding genealogical testing for victims of rape and sexual assault.
Yes.
So very commendable.
Yes, that's right.
Cool.
Big shout out for that.
And that's a wrap.
All right, good. Good story.
Thank you.
Good story. You mentioned something about other rapes and murders that was going around that same time.
That was the 70s, though. That was happening everywhere. That was
but around the same time that she died, the same thing.
He could have been. He could have been a multiple rapist.
Yeah.
There's evidence that shows that multiple rapists will rape again.
Right.
And
that's why I'm like, what did his DNA? Do you know? Did you come across? Did his DNA show up anywhere else?
That is an interesting question.
I wonder if they tested it throughout everything.
I wish I was a little bit more articulate as to my suspicion to tying conclusive evidence to these cases through DNA, because like I said, like how are you going to have tests? How are you going to save DNA testing samples? How are you going to collect that sort of evidence when that's not even a practice yet? It won't be for another decade. So I don't want to get conspiracy on this. Yeah. But I do have my doubts as to what's going on. Maybe not with this case in particular, but as far as this case goes, I didn't find any information that he was a repeat offender, one, and two, any other DNA evidence, because it sounded like he didn't have any fucking DNA evidence to begin with.
Yeah. Like you can't find out what kind of DNA that is, but if they're like eliminating women, then I'm going to assume that they got off of her body like it's probably like semen or something. Well,
yeah, I would think so too. It could be. It could be anything. It seems so curious. Like, so here's the thing: there's probably hundreds, thousands of cases that go unsolved because they did not have evidence that this has been sitting in a file for fucking decades,
right?
And it just so happened to be part of the case. It just so happened that it's eligible for DNA testing. It just so happens that they were able to tie this crime to the individual who they believe was the murderer and rapist. But I'm sure there's a lot of cases where it's like where they didn't have the foresight, or they just simply didn't have the evidence to. Yeah.
Especially in the 70s.
Yeah.
So whoever these, the people who thought it important to keep that,
Yeah.
That's good.
I guess as far as like what I believe as far as the story goes, I'm going to have to stand with the Boulder Sheriff's Department, because who's going to say otherwise? I'm not going to argue with science. I definitely want to say rest in peace to Betty Lee Jones.
Yes.
And I'm just, it's terrible that she got raped and murdered, but they caught the motherfucker involved.
Yeah.
Supposedly.
And, I'm glad that her sons know. At least they know. Yep. That doesn't bring her back, but at least they know. At least they get justice.
No.
And a bit, because the bastard's dead. So
yeah. Honestly, I didn't do much research on. I didn't do much research on the on this Paul Leroy Martin fella because based on my research, there wasn't a whole lot of information. He barely even existed as it is.
Right.
But yeah, the rabbit holes I went down was just basically finding who's actually involved in these in the DNA's testing, the process, what other services are available, and how it's used to process these crimes to be used as evidence. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then you think about shows like CSI and all these investigative shows.
Very unrealistic. Like it takes years to do the things that they do in 30-minute episode. All right. Good story.
Thank you.
It's so funny. Your whole story, mine basically mimics yours.
Interesting.
Literally down to the genealogy and everything, okay?
Go on.
So, mine is the cold case of Helena Pruszynski. And I hope I'm saying the last name correctly. And I'm going to list my sources right away. So, a lot of mine is widely from a documentary I watched for Cold Case Files series. Comes on A&E. And People Magazine, an article by Harriet Suckerminster. I'm sorry, I know I pronounced that wrong. SOKMENSUER. 9news.com and findagrave.com, where I got all my sources.
Yeah.
My story starts on January 17th, 1980. And I was going back and forth about this because I don't like doing old shit. But this has recently been solved too.
Yes.
So, January 17, 1980, a woman is driving through Daniels Park in Douglas County. She is a foster mother and she has a car full of kids. And she just kind of glanced over. They said at the time this park was just field, open field. I don't know what it looks like now. I couldn't get any pictures or anything of what it looks like now.
Sure.
Then it was all field. So this woman was just glancing down and looking at everything, and she noticed something that looks like a woman's body laying in the field.
Oh shit. So
she stops a roller worker and tells him what she sees. And so he, in turn called the police. So Douglas County Sheriff's Department arrive on the scene, and they do determine that it is a body of a young female. She is found laying on her back. She's nude from the waist down, but she's wearing a pair of socks. She has a gag in her mouth, and her hands are tied behind her head. Her hands are tied behind her back.
Sure.
After they turn the body over, they discover that there's a big pool of blood that was wet, so obviously she was killed there. This is the crime scene. But she had been stabbed multiple times in her back, and they turned her over, and then they seen all the blood and everything. They start to search the area for evidence, and they find frozen shoe and tire impressions. They say that you can see 2 pairs of shoes is leading to her body, where her body was found, and one is coming out. So another indication that this happened here.
Somebody was there.
Yeah, well, the crime happened at that location. She wasn't killed somewhere else.
Gotcha.
They find that, they said that the one that's leading the way is clearly the murderer because it's the cowboy boot impression. That's really all they know at this point. They don't know who she is because she doesn't have any ID or anything on her. They notify neighboring police departments.
Gotcha.
Seeing if anybody is, trying to find a missing woman. Not even a day later, the Inglewood Police Department reaches back out to them and tell them they are looking for a 21-year-old female, Helena Pruszynski, who had been reported missing the night before.
Right.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Helena. Helena Pruszynski was born on April 5th, 1958 to Chester and Henrietta Pruszynski in Huntington, Suffolk County, New York. She's the youngest of 3 kids. She has a brother, Chet, he's obviously named after the dad, and a sister, Janet Pruszynski, and she's married now, Johnson. At some point, I couldn't find when or why, but I did find that the dad was in the Army, I believe. And so that's probably why they was moving around a lot. But they ended up moving to Hamilton, Massachusetts. And so that's where Helena went to school. Hamilton is north of Boston. So a suburb of Boston, I guess you can say.
Gotcha.
And she went to Hamilton Wyndham Regional High School. And she was an honor roll student there. She was very active in her social activities. Her classmates note that she was in the drama club. She was in a show choir. She could sing very well. She did cheerleading. She was an editor on a newspaper, amongst other things. Like, just all around good student, you know.
Your typical overachiever.
Yeah. Yeah. So she graduates from high school and she goes to Wheaton College in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. They don't say where it's at, but it's obviously out of wherever she was living.
Right.
And she majored in journalism. In 1979 is her senior year of college, and she moves here to Denver, Colorado for an internship at a radio station.
Right.
This radio station is still around. I don't know. I was trying to find something so I could listen to see how they pronounce it, like if they say it some kind of way, but it's KHOW 630 AM. It's a news /talk show.
Talk AM.
Yeah. At the time where she was working there or interning there was news radio. Mm-hmm. That's just a little background that I found about her. So I'm going to go to the night of the disappearance. The night that she disappeared, she was working or interning at the radio station, and that day, so it's January 16th, 1980, it was snowing and cold that day. Mm-hmm. She would take the bus from the station to where she was living. She was staying with her aunt and relatives. I couldn't get into how many people was like, who the relatives were, except for one aunt that I know.
Sure.
But so her relatives, that's how she would get back and forth there. That's who she was staying with while she was interning.
Gotcha.
I can put it simply too.
And she just recently moved to town.
Yes, like very recent. So she doesn't have any friends outside of the people that she works with at the radio station. Mm. And they said that she was like very good. The guy, his name is Mike Anthony. He was the news director at the time. He was like, she was more like an actual journalist versus an intern. And, and so they valued her, you know. So if she wanted to stay, I'm pretty sure they would have hired her.
Sure.
So it's snowing the night that she disappears. And she asked Mike Anthony if she could leave early because she has to catch the bus. And he offers her a ride, and he tells her, I would feel better if you let me take you home. And she says, no, he said that she thought about it and it was like, no, I'm going to catch the bus. Mm-hmm. So keep that in mind, okay? Because it's going to come up again later on down the line. She says no and takes the bus. Anyway, so she leaves, and then he leaves shortly after her. And he gets home, and, he's been chilling or whatever. And then her aunt calls him about 8:30, 9 o'clock, and asked if she was still working or if she went somewhere else because she hadn't come home yet.
Right.
So I want to say around the time she left was probably around like 5 or 6. And he's like, no, she told me she was going straight home. I tried to give her a ride, because it's snowing, so she's going straight home. After he tells her that, her aunt immediately contacts the police and submits a missing person report. And so the police go out and they're searching the route that she would have took from the radio station to home, the bus route. And obviously they didn't find anything. They're searching around, and also her colleagues, Mike Anthony, the news director, and then there's another reporter, Bob Scott, who worked there, they were also searching for her in the same area. So they still obviously find nothing. So the next day, at this point, she's been missing 18 hours.
Oh, jeez.
Bob has a friend, his best friend is a captain at the Inglewood Sheriff's Department. And I'm like, that's convenient, but he's a reporter for the news, so that, it makes sense. Yes. So anyway, his best friend is a captain. They didn't say what he was captain of, but he's a captain there, and he tells Bob that they have a report out of Douglas County of a body, a young female's body, and they haven't identified her. So they ask if Bob, since he knows Helena, if he could come and identify the body. And so that's hard, that's fucked up. So he goes out and he identifies her. He's like, before I even got up there, I knew it was her. He identifies her. They know that it's her. I'm going to go to the autopsy. They have a little bit later, so 9 hours after they find her body, they did the autopsy. The ME determined that she had been stabbed 9 times in the back, and her official COD, cause of death, is loss of blood and a collapsed lung. They also find that she had been sexually assaulted. Dry fluid was found on and inside of her, and it is preserved. It's pretty much the same thing, your story and mine. Yes. They don't have anything to do with it in 1980,
sure.
So they preserve it. That's why I was saying, in your case, it's very good that whoever thought to to preserve it in 1970 had that thought,
Or it was just just by happenstance they happened to retain that sort of evidence that led to that, yes.
Right. Well, just even the thought to collect it, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Is well preserved in this case.
Yes.
Around this time, they have a eyewitness account. It's a woman saying that she's seen a man around Daniels Park around the time that Helena was killed. She sees a man who is like squatted over by a car, like looking like he's trying to fix a tire, change a tire. And so she goes to the police and tells them that, but she can't quite remember, So they put her under hypnosis. And while she's under hypnosis, they have a sketch artist come in and have her describe what, the face that she's seen. So they put a sketch out of him, and I want to post it up on our Instagram. And they circulate it around the news, and, nothing happens. Nobody comes forward about it. Spring of 1981, her murder goes cold. We're going to fast forward to February 7th, 1984. Now, this is going to be a little sidebar to my case, okay? Yes. I don't know if you heard about this or about these fuckers. This guy... Otis Toole was a real fucking tool. You know who it is?
I'm familiar, yeah.
Yes.
I listened to another true crime podcast.
And Henry Lee Lucas?
Absolute trash.
Okay.
Absolute trash. Garbage.
Fucking idiots. My sidebar into that is I watched the documentary they had on Netflix, The Confession Killer.
Yeah.
It's shame on him, both of them, and shame on these fucking cops who are coming all over from the country to interview them, and did you do this? And they're like feeding them, and they're like convicting them of these murders, and it's like the person who really did it got away. It's not justice or fair to these people who are dead and their families.
Well, let me ask you this: who at the time was involved in the investigation? Who was in charge of the investigation?
Well, that's all. It was just my sidebar, so I'll get into that.
Yes. Okay.
So I'm just saying how much of a dick move it is to confess to murders that you didn't commit, so that you could be the biggest serial killer. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then for the cops to go out there and, like you said, want to solve a case. So I got this guy who was admitting to it, but they're like feeding him the fucking case. So of course he's, whatever. Okay, so that's how I feel about them. Like, fuck you guys. Them and the police officer who closed any cases on any confessions that they gave. Back to it. Detectives in Jacksonville, Florida, are interviewing Otis Toole, and I put in parentheses a real fucking tool, for murders he and Henry Lee Lucas claim to have committed across the country. Because they were in Colorado during the time of Helena's murder, they were interviewed about it. Otis immediately, of course, admits to killing her. Yes. And he's given a story about how it was cold outside and he seen her at a bus stop and he picked her up. So I said, remember her news director offering her a ride and she's turning it down. Why the fuck is she going to get in your random car? Okay? Like,
but it's almost like it seems like something out of a movie or something where it's like you turn down a ride and then it's just crazy.
Yeah.
It's unreal. It's unreal.
Yeah, it's sad that it happened because, man, I know that the news director, Mike Anthony, he probably feels like, he should have insisted that he take her home.
What are you going to do?
Right?
Strong, independent woman.
I know she's a grown woman. You can't tell her anything.
You can't tell him shit.
Yeah. She's probably just new there, like she works with him, but she doesn't know him, you know? So, but that's my point in this, is why would she get in the car with you if she turned it down from him?
Right.
So, like I said, he gives the story of, she's standing at the bus stop and he sees her, and so he offers her a ride and she accepts it and got in.
Yes.
So when she gets in, he ties her hands up and he drives her to the park. He rapes, stabs, and shot her. And so she was not shot. She was stabbed 9 times and that was it.
I was just going to ask. I was like, well, where was she shot?
She was not shot. So that's how they know that he didn't fucking do it. You was in Colorado when it happened, so of course you know the story about how she came up missing and how her body was found, but obviously you didn't know that she wasn't shot.
The slippery slope of circumstantial evidence.
Oh man, thank God that he said something stupid like that. You know what I'm saying? Okay, well anyway.
Well, what you're saying is they did eventually find the real killer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They washed their hands of him. Like, she wasn't shot, so we know you didn't do it. Moving on. But they're moving on to it just being ice cold,
Right.
After that. I'll fast forward, because that was in 1984. So It remains cold all the way into, well, it's still cold after this, but in 2006, on the 26th anniversary of her murder, her high school friends and people that she was in the show choir with come to Denver, and they like walk the same route that she would have taken from the radio station home. And they call all the news stations here, and so that they can just try to get some attention to this case, because it's 26 years later at this point. Mm-hmm. But no new information comes from that. It's a good thing that her friends and her choir mates was trying to do, but nothing comes out of it.
Gotcha.
So that's 26 years. So we fast forward to 9 years later. After that, January 13, 2015. So this is 35 years after the murder. Douglas County gets a new sheriff, Sheriff Tony Spurlock. One of the first things he does when he gets in is create a cold case unit. Only thing that they're doing, they're just dedicated to solving these cold cases. That's all they're doing.
Nice.
So he enlists a full-time detective. He's Lieutenant Tommy Barella to head it. In the unit is made up of 5 civilians besides Lieutenant Barella. There's 5 other civilians, 2 lawyers, 1 doctor, and 2 people who have an interest in solving cold cases. Sure. I don't know what their profession is, right, but obviously they just have an interest in solving cold cases, which is good, because how terrible. This is fucking 35 years after this woman has been murdered. The sheriff tells Lieutenant Barella, like, I want you to solve these, or I want you to get like 2 of these a year. So what he's saying is that he has a lot. And that's what I was saying when we were talking about going down rabbit holes. Like, I want to go into that. Like, how many did y'all solve? Because I found another article on another detective who's on that unit. Right. And she solved shit. So I'm like, ooh, I need to see what they actually are, how many they actually solved. He's not the, Tony Spurlock, he's not the sheriff anymore. I think the new guy just came in 2020 or something.
Oh, it's okay.
That is still like another 4 years before they test this fluid that was found on her body. So the dry fluid that was found on her body turns out to be semen. The cold case unit, they submitted the DNA to United Data Collection Agency, and they do the genetic geologically.
Hard to say, trust me, I know.
Yeah, testing that you were talking about. Yes. So that's why I was like, I wanted to know what company you were talking about. Mm-hmm. But it's, like I said, United Data Collection, or United Data Collect. They break down that sample to get your genetics, to see who's in your family tree, or, narrow it down. After they break it down and get the genetic code, they submit it to 23andMe and GEDmatch.com. Mm-hmm. They get a hit on a woman who was believed to be the suspect's mother. They track her down, and I didn't get it straight if when they tracked her down she was dead already, and they was like talking to relatives that was in this family tree.
It just didn't pop up in your research.
Yeah, like the way that they said it on the documentary I watched and anything that I looked up, they didn't say if she was already dead, but the way they was talking about, like, she had already passed. So they find that they find that she had given birth to 8 children, 4 boys and 4 girls. They eliminate the girls because it's semen, and so that leaves them with these 4 boys, right? But when they track down the woman's family, they're like, well, she only had girls, no boys.
I see.
They do a little more research. It turns out that she gave 2 of them up for adoption. Now, they don't say what happened to the other 2, though. Because I said 4 boys, 4 girls. So they don't say what happened to the other 2 boys, but 2 of them she did give up for adoption.
So that information just is missing.
Yeah. I mean, like, even in the show, they didn't really say anything about it. They just said they dug deeper and found this article of this woman who reunited with her sons that she gave up for adoption. And it was this same woman. They see the 2 sons. They go for the first, the oldest of the 2. And his DNA, he's already been arrested and everything, so his DNA is already in CODIS, and it doesn't match. So then they go for the younger one, and his name is Curtis Allen White, and he had done prison time prior to 1980, so they had his DNA, but nowhere to fucking upload it, nowhere to store it, nowhere to put it, because
there wasn't a database yet?
There wasn't a database. They have to go off his fingerprints. They run his fingerprints. It comes back to a guy named James Curtis Clanton. So he had just changed his name. Remember I told you the woman went under hypnosis and they got a sketch of the face?
Can you elaborate about that? Because you say hypnosis like that's not some batshit crazy shit that police departments are doing.
Yes, I will elaborate on that. We'll go back to that.
Okay.
But the thing is, the sketch that they did is compared to the mugshot that came back for him, dead fucking ringer. And that's why I told you I'm going to put it up on our Instagram, the sketch and his actual picture. Like, it is the same fucking face, okay? They figure out who he is. They locate him, Lake Butler, Florida. They need to compare his DNA, to what they found, the semen that they found, to, confirm it. So they go down to Florida, Douglas County detectives, they go out to Florida, and they find him, and this motherfucker has the same schedule every day. They're tracking him for 6 fucking days, and no luck in getting his DNA because he does the same shit every day. So finally, the fucker goes to a bar and he's drinking a beer. They get the mug and they test the mug, and that's how they get his DNA. And they run it in. It's a match. So he's the one who killed Helena. 7 days after they do the DNA match on December 11th, 2019. After this point, it's 39 years after she's been dead. So they go to his property. They say that they're there because they're investigating insurance fraud that happened in Denver, Colorado. And he's like, well, what are you guys talking about? They're like, are you willing to come down to the station and talk to us about it? He's like, yeah. So because they want a confession out of him. We have your DNA, but we want you to fucking confess. So they take him down to the station, and right away the detective was like, well, I don't give a shit about fraud cases, but I do want to know if you recognize this woman from Denver, Colorado, who was found dead in 1980. So he shows him the picture of Helena, and he looks at it, and he's like, no, I don't know her, but I think I do want an attorney now, and I'm done talking, So they're still talking to him, they're like, okay, well, you're about to be arrested for the rape and murder of Helena Pruszynski. And he's like, well, you guys got the wrong guy. And they're like, we have your DNA inside and on her. And he's like, oh. Yeah, motherfucker, you're busted. So they're like, we're about to hold you here until you get extradited back to Colorado. They send him back, they extradite him back, and Lieutenant Barella is on the plane with him.
Hold on, what year is this?
2019.
And he was found in Florida?
Yes.
I see, okay.
So they extradite him back here to Colorado. So Lieutenant Barella is on the plane with him when they're coming back. And this motherfucker is singing like a bird, okay? He is telling them everything he wants to know about the murder. After he found out about the DNA evidence, it's like, well, fuck it. He said he seen her get off of the bus. So she did make it on the bus. She did make it to her bus stop near her house or near her relative's house. He seen her get off of the bus, and he rolled up on her and showed her that he had a knife. And she's like, I see the knife. He's like, get in the car. And so as soon as she gets in the car, he ties her hand behind her back, and he takes her to the park, and he rapes and he kills her. They're like, well, why? Like, what is the motive? What is the point in doing it? And he's like, everything bad that ever happened to him happened because of women, and he was just mad at women, and it was just fate that he seen her get off the bus. Like, he didn't it wasn't like premeditated. He didn't choose her. He just saw her and decided he was going to rape and kill her.
Sounds like a real piece of shit.
That's right. It sounds like there's a little bit deeper shit into the mom giving him away and what his life was like. I haven't been able to anyway, prior to us recording, obviously, found what was really going on. Like I said, what happened to those other 2 kids? She only had girls. What was the reason why she gave them up and shit like that. I didn't get into that, but I would like to, because I think that explains a lot.
It seems like it would be a straight line when you're looking at DNA that ties families together. But then when you actually go into these cases, you realize how broken a lot of family dynamics are.
That's right. That's right. And that seemed to be a very broken family there, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to assume anything because I don't know.
Sure.
So they, obviously book him in and whatever, and he's sentenced to life in prison. I think I seen something that he'll be eligible for parole in 20 years, but he's already like 63.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Fuck him getting parole. They didn't say anything about it, but I had to look into it. Her parents, they died. Both of them died before they could get justice for her. They both died in 2012. And just a little random fact, I don't know, it seems like they was a really loving, happy couple. I stumbled across something that is kind of interesting, as in dates.
Oh yeah.
The mother, Henrietta, she died on July 15, 2012. And her birthday is September 25th. She was born in 1922, and she died July 15, 2012. The husband's birthday is February 27th, 1918, and he died on September 25th, 2012. So he died on her birthday, same year.
That's crazy. One of those little factoids. It's
like the what's her name, Debbie Reynolds and her daughter.
Yeah.
Because that's only 2-3 months apart when he died, and he died on her birthday. So I was like, well, that's a random tidbit there. Yeah, man, I'm really glad that they caught him, and so he confessed to it. That's what you were saying. It's a shame that fucker in your case died before they can actually, interview him or do anything about it, because it could have been the same way for this. His reasoning for killing her is ridiculous, but that was his reason.
Mm-hmm.
So what his motive is. They was actually able to catch him, and he confessed, and he's in jail for the rest of his life. Or prison for the rest of his life. So the genealogy testing is a good thing, and I'm just going to go ahead and say what I was going to say. I don't know how I feel about uploading my personal DNA on there,
right,
but it's doing a good thing, because had the mom's DNA not been on there, they would have never caught this guy.
That's very true.
Yeah.
That's very true.
So we could go back to the hypnosis. Now, I do think it's weird. They didn't elaborate enough for me to elaborate to you about why they came to the conclusion of doing that. She says she's seen this person, but she wasn't really sure, couldn't get the face out. She knows she's seen a man.
Right.
So I don't know who suggested that she do the hypnosis
right,
and get a sketch artist in there, but you know what? Thankfully they did, because like I said, the picture of this man and what he looked like at the time is a dead fucking ringer. He looks just like the picture.
That's just so interesting, because it's I'm not here to argue the validity of hypnosis as a practice.
Right.
But in my opinion, it's definitely one of the more quacky practices.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, it's almost, calling in a hypnotist to help you solve a murder is almost akin to calling in a psychic.
Right.
But shit, dude, I mean, can you argue with the results?
No, you can't. If it's the same fucking face, damn.
That's quite curious. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, I would like to go more. They just went right over it. But when they got the DNA, they brought it back up. The sketch and his mugshot was identical.
Right. And
I was like, fuck, it is. He looks exactly like that sketch. I don't know. They didn't really go into it about the hypnosis, but like you said, can you question the results?
In this case, you can't. Go ahead.
Have you heard of this shit? Fuck, I can't remember her name. It was the first case of people having forgotten memories, suppressed memories. Yeah. And this woman claimed that she's seen her dad kill her best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And after I watched it, I was like, it's all bullshit. You know what I'm saying? But they didn't use this woman's sketch in court, so they had DNA evidence on him, so they didn't need to use that. It's just one more thing that this is him, because he looks exactly like the sketch. But
that sort of thing is very interesting to me. Sometimes you'll hear stories about people retaining memories of a previous life and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But wow, fantastic story, Tip.
Thanks. I was just very surprised that we both basically did the same thing.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
So I am familiar with this story.
Yeah.
I almost did this story too.
Yes.
For those new listeners, we do not talk in advance about which stories we're going to be covering. So by mere coincidence, both of our stories kind of are along the same lines. And actually, I do have Helena. I do have her information here in my notes as well. When they did catch him, he was processed in a court in Castle Rock. And actually, I've seen pictures of her. She's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
she was pretty.
A real go-getter.
Yeah, probably would have been a very good journalist.
Very successful, yeah.
Yeah. And you have issue with women, and all she did was merely get off the fucking bus.
I mean, did he have a problem with her as a woman, or do you think he had a problem with her being, like, more successful, or do you think that didn't even come into play?
No, he didn't even know her.
Right.
You know, he just seen her getting off of the bus, and I think that he set out to find somebody to rape and murder. Mm-hmm. Is what I think. And he unfortunately seen her get off of the bus. Unfortunate for her. Like, it's just like, obviously, if we knew what we knew then, what we know now, be like, get in the car with the news director. Like, let him take you home.
Yeah.
Let him take you home. But it sucks that she made it home. She made it off of the bus, headed home. So that sucks. The parents passed and the brother passed as well. And so it's just her sister who was left. So, good thing that her sister was alive to see justice.
Well, I think that's the point with both your story and in mine. Having that justice is important, whether or not there's anyone to actually bear witness to it.
Right.
That's the point of having a justice system. It just breaks my heart because it's like, what is it all for? Right. But it matters.
It does.
And it is important. There's no living relatives in this case who were able to bear witness on the justice that was served. Right. And he's going to rot in a cell for the rest of his life. Yeah. And good riddance.
Yeah. I'm very happy with that outcome. That they caught him, and then he like tried. I don't know who she is. Like, when they came, and I'm sure when they came and said that they was from Denver, Colorado, he knew exactly what they were there for. Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, they talking about some fraud shit. Like, oh, maybe it's not what I thought. But he get on that fucking plane and he's singing like a canary. He knew what they were there for right as soon as they got there. Yeah. So there's that.
I don't really have any questions.
I wonder if they actually ran his DNA against all these other people too, all these other rape kits and everything. Because could she really be the one and only person that he killed?
Doubtful.
And he's a truck driver, so I feel like in the future we might hear his name again.
I wouldn't be completely surprised.
Yeah, like in Florida and in whichever route he took to get there from here. Like, he's a truck driver,
And sadly, he's not the only, violent predator out there. Mm-hmm. The nice thing is the research, the processes, they're getting better every day.
That's right.
They're getting better every year. In fact, I made a note here, Bow Technologies is actually hosting, they're hosting some sort of fucking conference this year. For this sort of shit. I don't know, dude. It's just heartbreaking. Right. It's another fucking creep off the streets. If that's not good enough for you, I don't know what is.
I agree.
And kudos to the investigation team, like getting a DNA sample off a mug of beer.
Right. And trailing his ass for 6 days. Yeah. Fuck. They trailed him for 6 days.
That's some Mission Impossible shit.
That is. I'm like, yes, get him.
You ready? Yeah, good job. Fantastic research. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. If you are following us, thank you if you listen to us. I know it seems like we only drop a podcast once a year. We only drop a show, but I think we should really try to do like once a month at least.
We'll see what happens. For everybody listening at home, this is a lot of research involved. I mean, we're not getting paid. Obviously, we're doing this for the love of the game at the moment. But
yeah, and we work. I work 2 jobs, so
yeah, fucking A.
It's hard to do the research and work. It is something that I found that I'm passionate about to research, and I would like to do more extensive research.
All right, so be sure to follow us on our social media. We have an Instagram account. We are on Facebook. Are we on Facebook?
No,
we are not on Facebook. There's not even Facebook anywhere. We are not part of the metaverse.
No Facebook, but we are on Instagram.
We're on Instagram. We're on Spotify. Oh, and we're on YouTube also.
And we're on YouTube.
So find us there. As always, playing us out, Final Boss.
Woohoo! Thank you for listening.
Have a good night.